Um, all right, so anyway, so on Microsoft Windows, things you should get with your live data, you can either use a pre-built kit like Mandiant, Redline, or Velociraptor, or you can make your own, or you can combine the two. Mandiant Redline is one they made. I tried using it in my class several times. I couldn't make it work. It doesn't seem very good at all. But Velociraptor is great, so that's what we're going to use. So you run some script and it collects data, and Redline didn't work, but Velociraptor does this.
Is the Redline free?
It's free, but I couldn't make it work. It seems like it was designed for XP and not updated or something. I never got much success with it. The other thing you do, you can make your own, of course. You can just make your own scripts to collect what you want. Customize it to your operating system and find tools that collect your data you want. There's tons of tools out there. Windows has built-in tools. You can get date and time. You can get system information like OS version. The net command will give you user accounts. ipconfig, route, and ARP will give you network information. You can just execute these standard Windows machine commands. Of course, with a copy of these commands coming in, you don't trust the copy on an affected machine, but you can just use the standard Windows tools to get this information. There's a lot of free tools out there to get network connections, and Microsoft Auto Runs is from sysinternals to get all the automatically launching things. There's things that give you open files and process lists and log parsers, and there's a lot of tools. You could accumulate a variety of tools you like and use them. They say rename every tool with like a T in front of it, so if you can tell the running process that you put on there more easily. The things that start with a T are part of my toolkit and not part of the system. This is a good idea.
But if those tools run under a service host.
Run under what?
Run under a service host.
No. You just run them as they are. Yeah.
But some of the tools, they run under service host, right?
Well, that's true. You're right. They might launch services that run under service host or something, and so that not everything will be marked, but at least some of your things will be marked with T. It's a good point. It doesn't mean that everything that the tool did will start with the T. Exactly right. Okay, and so other things you want are prefetch information, the restore points, the browser history, and so on. Typical things you need to get.
How do you get prefetch information?
It's just a folder. You just copy the contents of a folder. It's pretty easy. It's not even protected or anything.
Do you remember the file name?
Yes, the file names just tell you what thing was launched, Notepad, things like that. And then they contain a bit of binary data which you can parse with the tool, which will tell you when that was last launched and who launched it. And if you use Velociraptor, it does all that automatically. It just gives you a nice log. That's why it's great. Velociraptor makes this incredibly easy. So you could write in any scripting language like PowerShell or Microsoft batch files or VBScript or Perl or Python, any language your machines have. Of course, Microsoft operating systems have these three languages, and they don't have these by default. But if your company has deployed Python to your Windows machines, it would be an option. So log everything you do and keep a checksum of all the data. Consider that directory names might be long and have spaces. Test it to make sure that it runs even when unexpected things happen. And for memory dump, like say FTK Imager is the standard, but there's a lot of others, like Belkasoft seems to be a lot better. There's a bunch of them. And from that test I talked about earlier, this one seems to do less damage to the system than FTK Imager, which is what I've been using for years. And you can use Memorize too. Memorize is a Mandiant tool that will do it from the command line. You can make memory images. So what you see here, it starts an audit. You're checking to see if it exists, and you're taking a batch result here. Batch results written to this file with a long date. Memory acquisition started, and it runs, and it's going to just make a file with all the physical memory in it. FTK Lite looks like this. FTK Imager just images your memory, makes a single file. You tell it where to go. You get a file with all the memory on it. And so you can also dump the memory for one process. If you just want the one process, and there's a Microsoft tool that does this called ProcDump, which is what I would use. There's a bunch of other tools available too, but you can just use the Microsoft tool. I don't see a reason to use anything else. Then this will save the memory from a specific process, and you can easily do this remotely in Velociraptor 2, and we'll do it in the projects. Here's one I thought was fun. I did some years ago. You go to run TeamViewer on your machine, and it pops up these numbers. This is the number to remote control, this number, and this password are what you need to remote control. And if you do a memory dump, which I did here, let me zoom in. I did a memory dump with procdump. Procdump, all you do is -MA and the name of the process, the number of the process. It dumps the process memory into a file, and then you can just open that file and look at it in Notepad to see the strings, and you can see both of those numbers are just sitting there in the memory. So this is very common. These numbers that maybe should be secret are in fact just sitting plainly in the RAM, and this is what happened to Target. They wanted to get credit card numbers, they put malware on the terminals, and they stole the credit card numbers from RAM. So anyway, it's pretty easy to do. It's a simple example of the kind of evidence you can get from the RAM of a single process. All right, and if you have a Unix-based system, then of course you have different commands to do essentially the same thing. There's something called linres that's badly out of date, but it was intended to do this. But you can do it yourself is really the only option. So just use bash or whatever Linux scripting language you like, or Perl or Python or whatever you've got. And then you use various normal bash commands to get that information. Apple gives you a system profiler, which gives you a nice list of all the operating system and hardware and so on. All right, tells you about the camera, tells you about everything. You have a system log is also in the system profiler. It's really pretty nice. And here's the Unix tools, of course. You've got date to find out the date and time. In Debian, you've got dpackage to give you all the installed software. You can use mount df and fdisk to get the file system. You can use cat to look at issues for the operating system version. You can find the kernel with uname -a and the uptime with w, and cron to get a list of all the scheduled tasks that are going to run, which are often malicious. You can get services. There's a tools for that, user accounts, groups, network interface, all the routing table and all that. There's standard commands to do all these things. You got the loaded drivers, open files, running processes, all the logs, listing of all the file system, and so on. There's standard Linux commands, so you could easily write a script to do all these things. And to collect memory. In earlier days, in Linux, everything was a device, including memory, so you could just mount the dev-mem device and just copy it with DD. They don't let you do that anymore in modern versions of Linux. So you just have to install this thing, Lime, Linux Memory Extractor, and that puts in a special driver so you can just directly access the memory. It works. So that's a simple way to get around that. All right, it's a loadable kernel module. You have to compile it for the exact kernel version that you're using. And I think I'll have a project on this. I think we've got one. And then you do it yourself. You can run this, and then you can get an image of the memory from a Linux system. All right, if you want to collect from BSD, then you can use DC3DD. This is a U.S. government forensics lab. It's another version of DD. This is a Florida Digital Forensics Lab, and this is another one. Anyway, these are ones they produced that can copy dev-mem. All right, so you may have to specify the number of bytes because there may be no end of file mark in the memory, so it knows where it stops.
What does DD do?
A DD is disk duplicator. DD will copy any disk to a file, just bit by bit. It makes a complete forensic image, and it's very handy. And it also works for memory if you have a driver to access the memory like a disk. Yeah. All right, and Memorize exists for Mac. You can use that there. Your book talks about Mac Memory Reader, but it seems to be gone. But you can use Memorize to dump the RAM from a Mac. And for individual process dump, Gcore, part of the GNU debugger, can dump individual processes on Linux. So that's a useful thing to know. The equivalent of PM dump, proc dump for Windows systems.
That is for core dump. G4.
Maybe it was intended for core dump, but you can specify to just dump one process. Yeah, you're right. It probably was originally intended for a core dump. All right. So there's one more Kahoot. 7B is here. There we go. started yet. There's still some people coming, I think. All right, maybe this is enough. All right. Okay, so what? Oh, they reinstalled. Wait, we've already done this one. Yes, this seems to be a duplicate. I think I launched the wrong thing. Let me try again. I think we're doing something duplicative here. We need 7B, right? Because that's one from the last one. Maybe were the answers different? Let's see. Let's try it again. Maybe I'm confused. But that didn't seem right. I went through these earlier today and they were okay. I must be making some kind of mistake here. Anyway, we'll see if it looks better this time. Face with a helmet, maybe? Or a bucket of paint? It's a face with a hat, I think. It's just a hat.
Magic hat,
A top hat.
magician hat.
Yeah, magician hat. Yeah, with the gold band. Yeah, that's cool. Somebody's pretty good with the Unicode. All right, hopefully we'll see some sensible questions here. There. Which one works on the Mac? System profiler gives you a whole lot of the evidence you want off a Mac. Which one is from Mandiant? Red line. Their idea was you can easily, it not only takes images, but it figures out if they're malicious, according to various clues. But when I tried to use it, it didn't work very well. So which tool runs on some Windows 7 machines, but not all of them? Yeah, Python might be on some machines, but it won't be on them all. You know, a bash script would run on the newest Windows machines because they now include Unix. But anyway, I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, but you could in principle use bash commands on Windows now because of Windows subsystem for Linux. Anyway, but you can only use Python if you've installed Python on it. And which one will gather RAM on Windows and Mac? Memorize. All right. All right. He missed one twice. And Louis won twice. And 7 is a new one, so they'll have to tell me who they are if they want their points. But all right, good. So let me stop this recording.